Welcome to Genuine Humans, exploring the stories behind the great marketing leaders of our time and hearing how their journeys have influenced the brands they've built. Brought to you by The Social Element, here are our hosts, Tamara Littleton, CEO and founder, and Wendy Christie, Chief People Officer.
Welcome back to Genuine Humans podcast, and I'm here as ever with the wonderful Wendy Christie. Hello, Wendy.
Hello, Tamara. How are you?
I'm doing absolutely fine, thank you. I'm keen to just get cracking on and introducing our wonderful guest, who is Tina Fegent. And Tina is a global marketing procurement consultant and the chair of the CIPS marketing group, and perhaps my favourite title, the co-chair of the Get Shit Done board for the Conscious Advertising Network. So welcome to the podcast, Tina.
Thank you. Nice to see you both.
Before we start diving into all sorts of probing questions, can you just sort of share a little bit about what you're doing as a procurement consultant?
Yeah, sure. So, thank you. Now, I mean, looking forward to the probing questions. It really sort of made me think about, my past and stuff like that. So, looking forward to that section. So, so I was one of the first, giving my age away now, about 30 years ago, to get involved in marketing procurement when I worked for what is now Telefonica with Cellnet. And I was like, oh, why is the advertising agency buying the mobile phone handbook? Which at that time, for the kids that are listening, the instructions weren't on the internet. Those days, they were a book. And I was like, why is the ad agency buying it? So I basically went to a printer and it was 50% savings. So I was like, oh, there's something here from a procurement point of view. And traditionally, procurement's been quite male dominated, and we haven't really, at that, 30 years ago, we weren't really involved in things like services or indirect procurement. So I just started to look into that. And so literally I was one of the first globally to get involved in the buying of marketing services. I've always been a procurement person and worked with some great companies, say Cellnet, and then I went to SmithKline Beecham, now GSK, and worked on everything below the line. I just read an article this morning about vending machines, and I did buy Lucozade vending machines. So I did everything there, and then I worked for Wonderful Orange. If you cut us all, we still bleed orange. The future's bright. Still got my EE phone number, and did marketing procurement there, and that was fantastic. And that involves when I was work client side, so it was looking at the whole, agency supply, ecosystem as it was, looking at where obviously we can put contracts in place and where we can get best value. I'm not saying cost savings, but best value for the marketing budget. And that is always the tact I've taken with any of the marketing clients, both, when I was working client side and now as a consultant, about driving best value. Where are the synergies? Where are the opportunities? And the roles really evolved. If I really look at where we were 30 years ago to where we are now, marketing procurement is really at the forefront of pushing, the supply chain, looking at digital technology, looking at the ecosystem. So then I worked for 2 advertising agencies, Grey and Low, and that was really interesting, having been a client, to go and work on the supplier side. And I've never worked so hard in my life as when I worked on the agency side. So I do appreciate how agencies work. There are a lot of great learning, but really from a procurement point of view, just getting the insight into how agencies work and the interaction with clients, both marketing and procurement. And then 16 years ago, I set up my own consultancy, working on my own, bring other people in when I need to. So actually working for agencies to begin with, but that didn't really take off as much because I think, 16 years ago, procurement was still fairly new. Agencies were hoping we'd go away and we didn't. So I've ended up working more client side. So that could be anything from, mentoring marketing procurement teams, training, again, helping them look from a strategic point of view about the opportunities from a marketing point of view. So really enjoy it. So I've been doing it, for over 30 years and really happy to be giving stuff back. So hence chairing our group, SIPS, as Chartership Procurement Supplies Group on marketing. I've done that since its inception. I keep volunteering to stand down, but no one wants to take over.
They won't let you.
No, they won't. And then, Jake and Harriet asked me to, along with Dino, be the co-chair of the Get Shit Done board for the Conscious Advertising Network as well. So 30 years in a nutshell there.
And tell me a little bit about the Conscious Advertising Network. What kind of shit gets done, as it were? Tell me more about, for anyone who doesn't know about it as well.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. So that it was set up by Jake and Harriet sort of about 4 years ago. Jake's neighbour was Turkish, living in London, went to the pub and got attacked for no reason. So Jake then met Harriet at a conference, thought, we should be doing something about this. So from a marketing point of view, basically our premise is that the ethics of advertising haven't caught up with technology. So we generated 6 manifestos, from things like disinformation to fake news to advertising to children's well-being. And they approached me. I met Jake through a pitch I was running, and he said, well, can you come and sort of join the team? I was like, why do you want a procurement person? But the premise is that we want to make sure that the manifestos clients and brands, agencies and brands sign up to, are involved in the pitch process. So what we do is basically get brands, the big name brands we've got like O2, SSE, British Gas, and what they do is any interaction they have on the media side. So we've got some big agency groups like Group M, Havas involved in the Conscious Advertising Network. Is when you're buying advertising, we've got a tracker. We basically say across these 6 manifestos, you have to make sure that you are adhering to these principles. But we've gone further than that now, and we actually thought we'd do ourselves out of a job. But, unfortunately, like the racism we saw after the Euros, and obviously, recently a lot of the climate change, disinformation that was coming out after COP26. We've actually started doing open letters, and we have regular meetings with the platforms about affecting change. So Pinterest last week announced they were working with us to make sure there's no fake claims going out about greenwashing, etc. And they get shit done board. We formed that last summer, and that's very UK focused, because actually we've got support from people like the UN who want us to look at it globally. We're all volunteers. We've got 4 paid staff now, but the rest of us are volunteers, and it's just about spreading the word. And basically, for anyone that's listening, we'd love brands, we'd love agencies to sign up and support our manifestos and how they buy and interact on the media point of view. And we're just launching a 7th one, which we'll launch in May, which is climate and sustainability, because obviously, as we all know, that's a really key focus. So we've listened to our members. So it's about sharing content, providing a voice to advertisers and agencies, working with the platforms and doing the good. So making sure that we have got the ethics in place and it is aligned with the technology that we are using these days when we procure media.
Amazing. It's such a good organisation to support. So hopefully people will take you up on that call to action. And going back 30 years again, I just want to sort of talk about how you got that first break in your career. I think Wendy is jumping at the bit to go further back, but I'm sort of interested into that early career of how you kind of got into this in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was sort of prepping for this, I think, was one of Wendy's questions was like, when you come out the womb almost, is that what you want to be as a buyer? You don't tend to find that with procurement people. There's never any buyer that I've ever met that said, when you want to grow up, what do you want to be? I want to be a buyer. So we all seem to fall into it as a job. I went to Brighton Poly and I did business studies and I actually did marketing in my last year. And Thorny EMI, a company, again, that dates those that are listening, joined the graduate recruitment scheme for procurement. And at that time, they were a big global company, but they had companies like, obviously, EMI Records, Rumbelows, Radio Rentals. These are what is like Currys these days, through to things like Thorn Lighting and Thorn Security. So I spent 2 years working at all the different Thorn EMI procurement teams. Met Cliff Richard, the proclaimers at EMI Records, through to buying capacitors at Thorn Lighting, which just bored me to death. So from that, I started to get a view about what I enjoyed buying. I thought this is quite good, spending somebody else's money and, meeting people, negotiating. But I really didn't like the direct, what we would know as direct purchasing. So as when I went to Cellnet, that's why I thought, oh, what's this marketing area of spend? And of course, when you look at an organisation, marketing, is a huge area of spend. We're coming out of the pandemic now, and we know that the marketing spend is on the increase. So I just started to get involved in marketing from that point of view, and actually just found my forte. My partner always said, I've never known anybody who loves their job so much. And I think that's still true. 30 years on, I make him watch all the ads. because I would not fast forward to them because I look at that ad, and look at this bit of direct mail that's come through, or look at this banner ad. I just really just loved it. And it was great being one of the first, alongside Mick, who was at Diageo, and there was Jeff, who was at BT. And the UK was the first market to start doing it, and it was great to be involved in that and to push the boundaries and work with Debbie Morrison when she was at ISBA to form Compag, their purchasing action group. And it's great. And it's a fantastic category. I love marketing. I love what we do. I love making change. The clients are fantastic, be it the CMOs that I work with on a daily basis or other marketing people, and you guys know it's a great industry to work in. It can be tough and can be hard. And, that's why I support, and especially the mental health initiatives, because my partner does suffer from mental health. So, I do really support, initiatives that Dougie's doing at the IPA about the pitch protocol and brilliant creative minds and stuff like that. So, it's a fantastic industry. I think meet people like you, Tamara and Wendy. It's just, it's a social industry. We've missed that the last 2 years.
Yeah,
It's just nice to get
absolutely.
out and about and see people and have a drink at Soho House or whatever, all those, being typical marketing people, but just great to get out and about again as well. But I love it. I love the job and I love the category.
It's a wonderful thing to be able to say that after 30 years that you still wake up and love your job. That is a great place to be.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned when you came out of the womb, you didn't immediately want to be a buyer. So was there something that you did want to be?
No, I didn't. I had a really ordinary childhood, a working class childhood in South London. Memories of my pogo stick and marking the pavement outside the house because I'd worn the rubber off, and the space hoppers, and friends that I made, and doing lots of different clubs, brownies, the Girl Guides. I was in charge of the Snowdrop Patrol. Mum made me do judo and swimming and stuff like that, and friends I've got today were childhood friends. But I never, I look back, I thought, no, I never really had a burning ambition to be anything. And actually, a recurring theme when I was prepping for this was my mum. My mum had to leave school when she was 14 because her dad died, and had to bring up her 5 brothers and sisters because her mum wasn't around that much. And I think she just wanted the best for me, and I am what I am now down to my mum, really. And I think she was the one that, I went to I got a scholarship to a convent, and yes, we couldn't wear shiny shoes, as the old story goes about the convent, and just encouraged me, not in a really pushy way, but I think she just wanted what she couldn't have because she had to leave school early. So no, she encouraged me to go to college. She encouraged me to go to Brighton Poly, and even then, I was doing business studies, which obviously is a good all-round degree, isn't it? Think, I've got my fingers in all different pies here, be it finance or marketing, and there was procurement, actually, there was buying, but I didn't do that as an option. So to be honest, it wasn't really until the milk round, or looking for where to go when I was 22, I thought, that's an interesting company, Thorny My, and that looks a really interesting role in corporate procurement. So, yeah, I just sort of, as I said, fell into it, and just really lucky, just really enjoyed it. I love that 2 years in trying different jobs. I think that's a part of it, in that I love variety, and I think that's why I love doing the consultancy gig that I do. At the moment, I've got a post-it note. I've got like 9 different clients, various shapes and sizes, and I think that's what I like. And I think, I look back and think, when I work for an organisation, I enjoyed it, but I don't enjoy it as much as I do now, and just that variety. And I think that's what, working at Thorny MI and working in procurement has given me, that every day is a different day, which is absolutely brilliant. So no, didn't come out of the womb thinking that, no plan, supported by my mum, and just that narrowing of choices, I suppose. And you can do a bit better. You can go to college, you can do business studies, and then sort of take it from there and fly, really.
And it might be, it sounds like you had quite an active and social childhood, and maybe you just didn't have time to be thinking, well, what do I want to do in 15, 20 years time? And I don't know, maybe it makes you a more rounded person. And I think, after all, for most of us, I wanted to be first a gymnast and then a hairdresser, and and what does it matter what you wanted to be, because I think it's so rarely where people actually end up. And listen to some of the stuff you do now that's around, sort of doing good and affecting change. And did any of that come out of your childhood experiences, do you think? Is that what you were like as a kid?
No, again, I was trying to work out where that's come from, because I do like doing good. So, I'm chair of our little residents association in the hamlet that I live in. And actually today I've actually done a collection. We've got a thing called Love in a Bag, where we're putting together toiletries and bags for Ukrainian refugees when they start arriving in Tame. And I did a note out, and I actually dropped off a load of stuff this morning to Tame Town Council. And, I'm chair of a residents association. I was director of a credit union. I've been thinking about why I do so much to give back. And I think, I read somewhere that someone sort of says sometimes it's the working class people that have come up from where they are. I'm not an Oprah Winfrey, or Howard Schultz, whatever his name is, from Starbucks, that have got billions and billions. But, I just like being generous. I'm okay with what I've got. I'm very lucky. I paid my mortgage off a few years ago. You only need so much. As long as I get my business class travel, that is one perk I do like. But, I do like to support and do good and make people feel good and stuff like that. But no, I don't. I think it's just come from my background generally, I think, in that we weren't tight, but I remember our first holiday at Pontins, where I won the fancy dress competition dressed as a litter bin, believe it or not. My mum stapled crisp packets on me. And our first holiday abroad, was to Spain, and that was it. And that was another sort of Pontins or Butlins or whatever. So, yeah, I think that obviously it must do in terms of that, but I think it's very much the social side, the friendship and those deep friendships that I still have today are friends that I went to school with, I was in the guides with, and that I went to Brighton Poly with. And actually where I live, two of my best friends, I saw my best friend this morning at the gym class, were people that I've known for 30, 35, 40 years. And I just like helping other people and being generous really and supporting them.
And thinking about some of those people that either you've just known, been friends with, or worked with over the years, who are the ones that have really influenced your career or your life in general?
I think my mum has been the main influence, and we say because she had to leave school when she did, and and that was really tough for her. And I've got a brother, and he's very different from me, and he's very content in what he does. But I think she's been the main influence because she just wanted better for me because of her childhood, and being brought up with her 5 brothers and sisters in a flat in Brixton, which wasn't trendy like it is now all those years ago. So I think her. And then when I was at Brighton Poly, there's 2 friends there that I'm still friendly with, best friends with now. And I think, and it's funny because we haven't married, we haven't had kids, and it almost like it wasn't, we never sort of discussed that, but it's just by nature we sort of ended up that way, and we're all just really similar and just enjoying life. And I think that great support and wanting that deep friendship and pushing each other to be the best and enjoy life the way we want to enjoy life. But yeah, it's like my old man always says, what was it in the water at Brighton Poly? Because you've all come out of it, and actually at 56 you're all doing, one friend that they've sold a health club they had, and she's sort of, in sort of enjoying semi-retirement. Another friend sells tea towels, and does tours for foreign, just has a great balance of life. And I think we've all achieved that at 56, which is great. And actually all my Brighton Poly friends, there's only one actually that's working 9 till 5 for a company and a great job, but everyone else is doing their own thing. So I think that's been my greatest influence, well, too, my mum and my Brighton Poly friends. And I don't know what it was in the water, in the sea at Brighton Poly, but that bond, we get together and we still talk about, oh, do you remember when you put that traffic cone in your head? And do you remember that shorts party? And the old man, all the partners like, oh, here we go again. But yeah, very, very formative, very strong. And I think it's made us all the people that we are now. But none of them know what I do. Even the old man says, you buy pencils. It's like, I've got my own website. Just go and look at what I do. Yeah, you buy pencils. It's like, right, okay then.
I still don't think my mother knows exactly what I do either.
It's always the way, isn't it?
It does sound, Tina, from there was a sort of lot about relationship building, as Wendy was saying. But I want to pick up on something that you mentioned specifically about the procurement industry. You said that it's very male dominated, and I'm sort of curious to know what impact that had on you. Was it something that you kind of became a bit of an issue, or did you just sort of double down? Was it a point of difference for you? So tell me about that experience.
Yeah, well, there's 2 experiences at one of the companies that I work for that really highlighted the fact being a woman. One is, and you look back now, don't you, that I was bullied by other women that work there for various reasons, and you look back and you think, well, what was that? I'm not one to play the feminine game, and I think that really affected me, in that I'm going to be the best I am for who I am. Is not because of how I look. I haven't got long blonde hair and short skirts. I'm not playing that game. And that was a real game changer, I think, in being a female. And it was hard in procurement because there were no role models. There were no role models that were female. There were no role models that worked in marketing. And the other thing that happened is, I did a great piece of work at this company. It was a global project. Bear in mind, this is 25 years ago. We were one of the first to do it, and had a meeting with the chief procurement officer, a bloke, a man. And I was so frustrated, I started crying. And still to this day, I'm annoyed with myself about it, because if I'd been a bloke, would I have cried? And it was just the emotion just got the better of me in terms of being so frustrated. And I still regret it to this day, actually, that I sort of let myself down. And I think, well, I shouldn't do, because I was so passionate about what we were doing. We were just, this really brilliant project that was UK, US focused. We delivered some huge results for the organisation, and he just wasn't interested. Go back to buying X, Y, or Z. It's been really tough, I think, procurement has been very male dominated. When I worked at Thorny and Meyer, the three chaps I worked for were interested in buying, the car deals and stuff like that, and have their bottles of whiskey delivered at Christmas time. Predominantly, it was that sort of thing. But I think if you look at more and more, people in marketing procurement, there are a lot more females now, which is fantastic, and you are starting to, actually, if you look in the civil service in the UK, there are some fantastically strong women, absolutely brilliant women, but that's public sector. And I think, that's a very different type of procurement. But I think it would be really good in the private sector if there were more role models from a female perspective, because we do suffer from an image problem. I mean, I joke that none of us want to come out the womb thinking we want to be buyers, but it is a serious point that actually, where is it as a serious career choice? And I was on a webinar with SIPS a few months ago, and there was a chap on there saying, his son actually is interested in being a buyer, and he went to the school, and the careers person was like, he said, the son was there, and I think I want to work in procurement. And the career teacher was like, oh, yeah, whatever, sort of let's move on, and that's something that, as SIPs or as buyers, that we should look at changing. A friend of mine works for a school, and she said, will you come and do a careers talk? And I'm like, oh, yeah, great, because actually if I can get to those 13, 14-year-olds and talk about it, being female and working in buying as well. Yes, so it has been really tough in that there hasn't been any female role models in what has been a male dominated environment, but it has changed. I think, especially say procurement, there's a lot more women around, especially say in the public sector, doing phenomenal work. And I think within marketing procurement, I would say probably 2/3 of people are female now. We just need to get up the ladder and get out there, and I think provide more support, be more vocal to encourage young people into the industry.
And I think, you are one of those role models now. And it's always that thing that if you can't sort of see the change that you want to see, you have to sort of be that role model yourself. So I think that's helped the industry enormously. And particularly the fact that you've worked both sides, I think that's probably given you so many different insights. And if I could actually just ask about that, is there any advice that you would give to agencies, and then an advice that you would give to brands having seen it from both sides?
I think the advice is the same for both. It's respect for the role. And I think whilst it has got a lot better, there still is that thing, will procurement go away? It's like, well, I've been doing it for 30 years. I don't think we're going away anywhere. I think, the issue is, obviously, there are procurement people that have different agendas, that are focused on cost savings. And because actually, if you look at a procurement job in any organisation, it is about maximising that value, and it obviously is how you determine what that is, and also to reduce or manage the supplier base. I mean, I'm working with a global client at the moment, and they've got like 1,200 marketing suppliers, on their system. And it's just like, and it's trying to see the wood for the trees and try and help them. So I think for both, be it brands where there are the internal clients, be it marketing, e-commerce people, or where it's agencies, I think procurement has a great role to play if you get the right relationship with the right procurement person, because we are much more, on the CFO's agenda, on that top table than we ever were, down to COVID really, in that, when the shit hit the fan about contracts and suppliers, okay, who can help us? That is a procurement.
Yeah.
And so many of my procurement friends that I work with and colleagues are now much more involved upstream in terms of budget setting and the strategy and looking at the marketplace. And is it make versus buy? Do we need to look at in-housing? What is that requirement? Do we actually need to do that, for example? So I think that my number one thing is always respect, both for agencies. Invest the time to understand procurement. And it has got a lot better, the last 18 months, 2 years, especially a lot of the big organisations. I've seen some fantastic documents, added value, ways of working, really talking to procurement. And you think, well, absolutely great on you, because I was the first to work agency side, and there are now more procurement people, mainly obviously at the big holding companies. Just invest the time to understand procurement. And the same for clients, I think, is procurement has a great role to play, but you need to work together, because there's nothing worse than having a divisive team where you've got marketing and procurement on different sides of the table. That is never going to work, and that's not going to be good for the agency. Like yesterday, I had a call with an agency, I'm working with their client, and it's a very tricky situation. But, for that half an hour, saying to the, agency, even though I'm paid by the client, look, let's see how we can do this to do that. And if you do that, we could then look at this, and just trying to, that marriage broken, really trying to sort of get that together. So yeah, I think it's just respect and understand the role, and understand that they could be different. They will be different, in that you have got someone who's cost focused, or, is value driven, or is looking for supply. Understand where they're coming from, and then you can work with them.
And I think that's critical. And I know that Wendy and I are looking forward to working with you and helping the social elements sort of grow in their education around working with procurement. Because, as a founder myself, and as you know, the social element has gone into its 20th year this year.
Oh, congratulations, 20 years.
I know, but I had to
good on it.
Thank you. I had to make this stuff up as I went along. And I remember the first dealings that we had. I mean, we were lucky enough to actually start working in the early days with people like Disney and GE and all of these like incredible brands right from the early days. But the first stage that we went through proper RFPs and procurement, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And I had this sort of misunderstanding and had this sort of sense that you weren't allowed to talk to procurement people, because there was such a sort of clear process of how you do things that, for a long time it just felt that you were so far away as procurement people. And obviously, we've changed our approach completely, and it is all about relationship building and working together. But I think you're right. There was that sort of PR of procurement needed some work doing on it, to know that, procurement people are people.
Yeah, I agree, Tamara, and I think we didn't help ourselves a lot of the time, and obviously there was a lot of stuff off printed in the press. I remember Peter York, the star guru, as it was called, as procurement Nazis at one point. You think, why is he having a view? But, there were a number of instances, I think, where we didn't help ourselves, and you'd often see the trade press and it'd be very negative. That has stopped, and I think you're right. I think procurement has taken a long look at itself, and actually has invested the time, and is a lot better than where. Well, I think everyone has. I think agencies have as well, big and small. Yeah. So I think whilst I say it is respect, I think we have gone a long way the last few years, which is great, because there are benefits. All I would say is just everyone's got different agendas, and it's just understanding what those agendas are.
Yeah. Something that's kind of like niggling away, when you've got something in your head and you can't let it go. It was something that you said just a little while back about, losing your emotional control with that chap and crying. It's something I really hope that the world has changed, that it is okay, because I love a good cry in a meeting.
Is that true, Wendy? How often have you seen her cry?
I am saying nothing.
It's not often, but I think it can be a sign of passion and often frustration. But I suppose I'm an advocate for being in an environment where it's safe to do that.
Exactly. I think it's trust is a part. I mean, obviously the situations will vary, but I think being able to be vulnerable and display that in emotion in an environment where you feel safe and you trust the people you're with can be
Yeah.
hugely valuable, maybe.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way since that. I do regret doing it, but as you both say, I probably shouldn't regret doing it because it was just out of frustration with this, male who just didn't understand. Would it have been different if it was a female? I don't know, maybe.
It's hard to know, isn't it? I remember it happening to me. It would have been about, more than 20 years ago. But it was in an open plan office with my boss's boss. Oh, God, it was just awful. I feel your pain.
Yeah, but I think it's reframing it as that it's okay to be vulnerable, and vulnerability is a strength. That's what I would say. So I think you should scratch that away from 20 years ago and reframe it.
Yeah, the bullying thing, then when I look back at that was pretty awful, really. And I do think,
oh God, yeah,
there's no excuse for that, really, that, everyone is their own person. But it made me appreciate, I think, be more emotionally intelligent, be more, aware of people's feelings and that's, it's a hard lesson to learn, but there's no excuse for that. And I think especially female to female.
Definitely. And I think some of those things can really sort of shape how you want to work with other people in the future. Because I know that I had an experience in the past where I was let go from a job. The only time that I've been sacked from a job, and it was after 3 months. And then suddenly they told me all of these objectives that I should have done before my 3-month probation, which I'd never seen. So they were like, here's a list of things that you failed on that you've never actually seen before. And then actually did that walking me out of the building with my box of things while I got into a taxi. And that's the kind of thing that stays with you. And I sort of thought, I never want that to be anyone's experience. And I never want to sort of have an agency where sort of these kind of things happen. So it's funny how even in this sort of crappy times, you can kind of use that and think, well, I want to be a better person than the way that I've been treated.
And I think that's what it did. I mean, by the way, Tamara, I hope they pay for the taxi. You didn't pay for the taxi, did you?
I did have to pay for my own taxi with my little box with the plant in it.
I wonder if that happens with the apprentice candidates when they're being carted off in black.
Yeah, did you take credit card? They have to say, because Alan Sugar hasn't paid for it. But you're right. It was a real great lesson still to this day about people using their feminine ways to get stuff done, which I really disagree with. And I think that's made me, I'm bloody good at what I do, and it's not always easy to say that, is there? But I think it gave me the confidence to say I'm going to be the best at what I do. Stuff you, regardless of you. I'm not, dressing like that, you doing that, for example. I'm not playing the game. I'm not playing the game, and that's why I've got to where I am. I think I think it did help actually. But it still hurts, but it did help. I think
play your own game. So, what have you been most proud of in your career so far?
Oh, what am I most proud of? It's a silly little thing, but being in the campaign A-list.
Fantastic.
First procurement person to be in that, and them kindly calling me a good egg. Because that was great. There'd never been a procurement person in obviously the campaign A-list, and to be called a good egg as well. So there's that, and also I won a Women in Marketing Award, I think a long time now, 2014, to get that, and also I got awarded a fellowship by the SIPs as well for my services to marketing procurement. But I think it was the campaign A-list. I was quite proud of that, I have to say.
That is brilliant. And I think it's interesting that when you are running your own thing, so, you run your own business, which means you have to do your own PR and marketing. How do you kind of balance the whole trying to sort of promote the Tina Fegent brand as well? Have you got any sort of tips on how you do that or how you're juggling that?
Yeah, it's funny. Someone sent me a LinkedIn message not so long ago and said, Tina, who are you using to do your LinkedIn? Because you must spend about an hour a day doing it. I'm like, no. And I don't think I've been on LinkedIn for the last, week, because obviously, there's a lot of different stuff on there at the moment. And I always remember, because I always regret not calling myself a name, like a brand. Sure. And I remember I did a favour for a design agency years and years ago. And I said, well, should I have a name, not just Tina Fegent? And they said, no. And I always remember they said, like Anne Summers and Eddie Stobart, you are who you are. I'm like, right, you're comparing me to a lingerie and a haulage company. Great. Yeah, the other thing I do realise, I wish I'd been Tina Fegent, I don't know, of Avalon. When you check into someone's reception Mind you, I did check into WPP's reception and we laughed about my surname. And on my badge, it came up as Tina Fegent. I thought, goodness, Tina's only 4 letters long. Fegent, you might have a problem with, but Tina, please, Tuna. Yeah, no, people say that. I think because I love what I do, and it's about spreading that the positivity, the positive message, and that's why I think that resonates and comes out in that I like sharing stuff, and sharing information and doing that, and also like doing talks, because again, whilst it's about Tina Fegent, it is about this is what good procurement can be. To be on a panel, to be asked to write, have a point of view. For me, I've actually always thought it is about spreading the marketing procurement message more than getting Tina Fegent out there. And I think obviously that has been a nice, benefit, because it does help, even though some people do use my name in vain. I have had a story where, I've heard an agency say, well, I know Tina Fegent, and they're like, they got caught out because they try to get a 10% discount or something. And they're like, no, I don't know them. So, and I said, well, if they pronounce my name wrong, they don't know me. So if they, that's an easy test. So yeah, I think you're right, Tamara. I mean, you're good at it as well, in terms of you're passionate about what you do. And obviously we've been on a couple of conferences together. Yeah. I think it's really important, for us to be out there and to talk about the things that we are really passionate about on behalf of the industry, isn't it? In terms of what you do and what I do. And as a consequence, that is the Tina Fegent brand. And I suppose I'm glad in one way that I didn't rebrand as, I don't know why I thought of Avalon, but Avalon Limited or something, it's Tina Fegent, the brand.
Yeah, and you're very good at it. And I know that we met during lockdown in Clubhouse, didn't we? That was, I think, where we first started sort of chatting.
Is it? I don't think I realised that. That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we were kind of like both sort of experimenting with different formats. And I think everything that you were saying, I was like, she's really smart. I like what she's saying.
Likewise.
So I think we might have reached the part of the podcast where I'm going to get my probe out again, Tina.
Right.
Let's start with, what's your idea of a perfect weekend? Any guilty pleasures?
Obviously quite difficult at the moment, but I would actually like to have more weekends away, and sort of traveling a bit more than we have. That's been my first choice. If I don't travel, then it actually is going to the cinema. I absolutely love the cinema. I love the big screen, and then sort of dinner with friends. That would be sort of plan B.
Sounds lovely. This actually links back to some of the stuff from earlier, but is there any advice that you'd give to your teenage self?
I think do everything. I think my mum was very good, in terms of encouraging us to do, the guides and the brownies and judo and swimming and stuff like that. It's just try it. Just try it. If the opportunity's there. One regret I have in my career is not living abroad. I've got a couple of godsons and in their 20s, and I just keep saying, to get the chance, just I really wish I'd had the opportunity, and I probably would have done if I'd thought about it, but that'd be my second. So do everything, and if you get a chance to live or work abroad, just experience a different culture and different way of working. It'd be fantastic.
And is there anywhere in particular that you wished you'd lived?
Yeah, New York.
Oh yeah.
Even now, I really wish I could get a client, any clients that are listening, that I'd go over every 6 weeks for a week or something. I've got relatives there. I just love New York so much, the buzz of it. I don't think I'd like to live there because I've got mysophobia, which is that I'm really sensitive to noise. Like, people, eating crisps on a train. Oh my goodness, and that sort of noise. So the New York noise, but yeah, I'd love to have lived in New York when I was younger. Yeah, I'm not sure as you get older, it was a older person's place, but I just love the buzz. So New York, definitely.
Yeah, there's something about New York. I know that whenever I go, I always come back with energy, new ideas, and a sort of like a renewed energy. It's got something, hasn't it?
It has. It really has. Much more than London, I think. I like the individuality of it. You walk around the dirty breakfast places and the coffee shops and walking everywhere, and I love the grid system as well. Just in the service. So yeah, New York, I'd love that.
Fantastic. And you said that you've been out and about a little bit more now that, we can be out and about a bit more. Have you discovered any new restaurants, or have you got like a favorite restaurant that you can share, or maybe one in New York? Who knows?
Yeah, my favourite restaurant is the Japanese restaurant called Penyang at Soho Farmhouse. So I'm lucky enough to be a member of that. And of course, that's in the Cotswolds, and a lot of, that's about a 40-minute drive away from me. And I just absolutely love the Japanese. I always have the same thing: vegetable tempura, the beef, sticky rice. But that is my favourite restaurant.
Maybe I can persuade you to have a meeting with me there.
Very welcome. You're both very welcome.
Yep. Heard it on the podcast. Is there anything that you've still got on your bucket list? If you've got a bucket list, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a step grandson who's 2 years old who lives in California, and obviously we only met him once. I mean, he's coming over in a month's time, and I think my bucket list would be to probably go and work over there, like for 3 months in every year or something like that, or base ourselves in Palm Springs or something like that. So, obviously cats permitting, I've got 2 cats and the old man and, my elderly mother. But, I think I would love that. I think 3 months, and that would also cover off the thing I said to Wendy about working somewhere different. And
True. Mm-hmm.
yeah, just 3 months, California, even 6 months.
So you need a client in California for 3 months and then perhaps the year after in New York for 3 months.
Yes, if you could arrange that. Anyone listening?
We're putting that out into the universe. There you go.
That'd be great. So no, I'd love to do that and sort of spend time with them. Yeah, because these days we can, can't we? We can do that.
Absolutely.
I've got a friend who's just gone to Corfu for 3 weeks, and she hasn't told the client, but it's absolutely fine. In terms of as long as she's on the calls and stuff like that, that's absolutely fine.
Absolutely. So if Tamara and I could give you an extra hour every day, what would you do with it?
I'd read a book. I'm really, really bad. I've had 2 books by my bedside from a year. And we did start a book club in our little village before lockdown. We tried to sort of carry it on. We got a few intellects join, and we were like, we don't want to be analysing every bloody bit of grammar and everything. We just want to read some chick licks, And obviously when I was commuting, when I was going to London 3-4 days a week, it was perfect. So I'd read a book. But, social media is too consuming sometimes, and it's annoying. So it would be to read a book and get our village book club up and running again. We all say it, don't we? It's just making the time at the end of the day. So read a book.
And how would your friends describe you? And is that the same as how you'd like them to describe you?
Well, it was quite nice because a friend sent me a text the other day and said, "Oh, you're the most kind and generous person." I was like, "Oh, that's quite nice." So yeah, I think loyal, kind, generous. Hopefully a bit funny, as in, not funny,
not peculiar.
So yeah, no, just because, just has some, recent issues with my partner and in terms of his health, and, friends been really supportive. And so that's actually the text that I had a few weeks ago from a friend. So that was really nice. So yeah, that does it for me. That's, the loyalty, the generous, the funny bit, hopefully I can work on a bit more, crack a few more jokes. So yeah.
And how nice to get that out of the blue as well.
Yeah, it's
someone
really
that really
nice.
Lifts your day, doesn't it?
Yeah, I didn't have to pay them. It was absolutely fine.
Well done.
So, Tina, it would be incredibly wrong of me to invite you on the show and not get you to talk about your best pitch story. So are there any funny stories or anything that you want to share? Nothing that's going to get us into trouble, if that's okay. But yeah, have you got any sort of good pitch stories that you want to share?
Yeah, there was one when I worked at one of the agencies, and the client was a low-cost airline. So first of all, the offices that the agency were in at the time were really expensive, marble lined and £60 a square foot at the time. So that didn't help to start with, because these guys I'd been to their offices in a hangar off a, regional airport, and the CEO wanted to spend £2,500 on flowers to start with. So obviously I then stopped that. So that was the first challenge. And the clients walked in, and I was actually in the pitch, which, was unusual, I think, for me. I was commercial director there. And as it happens, I actually did know the head of marketing, because actually I'd worked with him at Orange. So I ended up doing the teas and coffees, goodness knows why. So I just said, okay. So when I did the teas and coffees, I asked them all for £1.50. Because that's what they charged on their airlines, the teas and coffees. We didn't get through the pitch. I hate, I was like trying to show that we were being cost effective. I've already got the expensive flowers cancelled.
That's brilliant.
I think one of them did give me some money, which I then gave back. So we didn't get through, but I don't think it was just because, I think it's because I knew the guys. I think it's because, there were bigger reasons than my £1.50 for a cup of coffee. So yeah, that's probably the best pitch story I've got from when I worked
I love
agency side. But pitches are great. I think they're a great opportunity, and it's good now that we're starting to have a few more than face to face, because we're in a people industry, as we said at the beginning, about the interaction, that social interaction. So yeah, it's always great. But the other thing is, people take the mickey out of me, but I always look at the agency biscuits. And then I did upgrade to the agency toiletries, and I know there's a few agencies before COVID that wasn't White Company toiletries in there. I know my White Company that did not smell. That was, Sainsbury's own in a White Company container.
No way.
Yep. I've sussed that out. And then biscuits. I just read an article in Campaign this morning from Katie Lee, who's moved to Wavemaker, about why aren't there any biscuits in media agency pitches. I thought, that's a good point, actually. A media agency is a bit tight on their biscuit front. So, so for procurement, the other thing from pitches is, watch out for your biscuits, but also the toiletries if the client goes to the loo. Because it's overhead. I mean, joking aside, it's because we think you can afford expensive chocolate biscuits and White Company. That's overhead. I mean, it's taking the mickey a bit, but we joke about, we don't usually put it on the scoring sheet. It's fine.
It's just the impact. I do remember going for retro sweets for a pitch once, and just got incredibly lucky that the client said that they had such a happy memory about the particular sweets that we'd bought, that we'd won the pitch on that.
Another one is a media agency, actually, quite a few years ago, had their own in-house chef. And I remember we took this client in there, and I mean, it was a feast, and absolutely. But one of them was scones, but the cream and jam was separate. So it's very hard, if you're obviously wanting to pay attention to the pitch, to get the scone or scone, get the cream or jam first, and actually do it. And of course, the client was desperate for this scone, but didn't want to be leaning over to actually get the cream and the jam, in terms of that. So that was funny as well, actually.
Well, being half Cornish, that could have caused a complete riot in terms of whether they chose jam first or cream first as well.
Yeah, that's true.
That was a risky move. Oh, fantastic. Well, this is the end of the podcast now. So I would just give you the opportunity. Is there anything that you actually wanted to talk about that we haven't had a chance to cover? Or if you've got any closing thoughts, I'm going to pass the platform over to you, Tina.
I think I would, we've covered a great deal. So thank you both very much. Really enjoyable. It's just a quote that I saw last week in one of Richard Tabacawana's. He does his weekly newsletter. I'll send you one when I get the next one. And actually, he was talking about work. And actually, he said, find alignment with what you excel at and what makes you grow. A niche allows you to build expertise and position yourself. And I thought, that's what I've done. I think, and I was on a call actually working for a client, and they got a procurement consultant in there who I worked with 25 years ago at GSK. And he was saying, you created that niche and you've really enjoyed it, and you've built the expertise up and you really enjoy it. So I think, those words really echo with me. So, find stuff that you really want to enjoy, that makes you help you grow, but you've got to enjoy it. You don't want to be miserable. You've got to have a passion for what you do. So yeah, find your niche is probably what I would say. And then from that, be positive and think of others as well. I think, be aware of others, have that emotional intelligence sort of switched on, and then you'll grow and just and have fun.
You've been listening to Genuine Humans, brought to you by The Social Element. If you loved what you heard, remember to subscribe, or you can find out more at www.thesocialelement.agency.